The amber liquid burned as it slid down Jade Romano's throat, but not as much as the memory of finding her fiancé in bed with her research partner. The space station's cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders, miners, and fleet personnel, but Jade felt completely alone in the crowd. At 28, she had dedicated her life to xenobiology, spending years studying alien ecosystems and terraforming technologies. Her work had earned her recognition across the galaxy, but tonight, none of that mattered. The betrayal still felt fresh, even though it had been 3 weeks since she walked into their shared laboratory and found them together. The worst part wasn't just catching them in the act, but realizing how long it had been going on. All those late nights when she thought they were both working on separate projects, all those conferences where they claimed to have different schedules. The lies had been carefully constructed, and she had been too trusting to see through them. Jade signaled the bartender for another drink, ignoring the concerned looks from Captain Noah Cross, who sat a few stools away. Noah had been trying to get her attention for the past hour, but she wasn't in the mood for his protective friendship tonight. She just wanted to forget, to drown the pain in whatever synthetic alcohol this station served. The cantina's lighting dimmed as the station entered its night cycle, and the crowd began to thin. Jade's vision started to blur around the edges, but she didn't care. The alcohol was finally doing its job, numbing the ache in her chest where her heart used to be. She had always been the responsible one, the dedicated scientist who put work before pleasure, but tonight she wanted to be someone else entirely. As she reached for her glass again, her hand trembled slightly. The room seemed to spin, and she gripped the bar to steady herself. Through the haze, she became aware of someone approaching from her right. The presence felt different somehow, carrying an otherworldly grace that cut through her alcohol-induced fog. "You appear to be in distress," a voice said, deep and melodious with an accent she couldn't place. The words seemed to resonate in the air around her, almost musical in their cadence. Jade turned slowly, her movements clumsy from the drinks. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Standing beside her was perhaps the most beautiful being she had ever encountered, tall and elegant, with features that seemed almost too perfect to be human. His skin had a subtle luminescent quality, and his eyes were the color of deep violet nebulae. Long silver hair cascaded over his shoulders like liquid starlight, and he wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. "I'm fine," she managed to say, though her words slurred slightly. "Just having a drink or 7. The stranger smiled, and the expression transformed his already stunning features into something that made her pulse quicken, despite her intoxicated state. "Perhaps I might suggest that you have had sufficient refreshment for one evening." There was something about his voice, a hypnotic quality that made her want to listen, but her stubborn nature, amplified by alcohol, rebelled against his suggestion. "And perhaps I might suggest that you mind your own business, pretty boy." Instead of taking offense, he laughed softly, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Ah, a spirited response. I find that admirable." He gestured to the bartender, who immediately brought him a glass of something that glowed faintly blue. "I am called Zendros. And you are?" "Drunk," Jade replied, then immediately felt foolish. "I mean, I'm Jade, Dr. Jade Romano." She tried to sit up straighter, some ingrained professionalism breaking through her haze. "A doctor," Zendros mused, his violet eyes studying her with obvious interest. "What manner of healing do you practice?" "Not that kind of doctor," she said, waving her hand dismissively and nearly losing her balance. "I study alien life, terraforming, making dead worlds live again." The irony wasn't lost on her that she could bring life to barren planets, but couldn't keep her own relationship alive. Zendros's expression shifted subtly, becoming more intense. "Terraforming," he repeated slowly. "How fascinating. Perhaps fate has brought us together this evening." Before Jade could ask what he meant, the room began to spin more violently. The alcohol hit her system like a tidal wave, and she felt herself sliding off the stool. Strong arms caught her before she could hit the floor, and she found herself pressed against Zendros's chest. Even in her drunken state, she could feel the solid strength of his body and smell his intoxicating scent, like ozone after a lightning storm mixed with something floral she couldn't identify. "Easy," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "You are safe." The world faded to black as consciousness slipped away from her. Jade woke to the sensation of silk against her skin and light filtering through what seemed like crystal windows. Her head pounded with the intensity of a plasma engine, and her mouth felt like she had been eating recycled air filters. Slowly, she opened her eyes and immediately wondered if she was still dreaming. The room around her was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed gently with soft light. Furniture that appeared to be grown rather than built filled the space, all curves and organic shapes that somehow managed to look both alien and incredibly comfortable. The bed she lay in was massive, covered in fabrics that felt like liquid against her skin. She sat up carefully, trying to piece together what had happened. The last clear memory she had was talking to the beautiful stranger in the cantina. Zendros, he had said his name was. Looking down, she realized she was still wearing her clothes from the night before, though someone had removed her boots and placed them neatly beside the bed. A soft chime echoed through the room, and part of the wall shimmered and became transparent, revealing Zendros standing in what appeared to be a garden beyond. He wore different robes now, these ones a deep purple that seemed to shift and change in the light. When he saw that she was awake, he smiled and approached the transparent barrier. "You are well, I trust?" he asked, though he made no move to enter the room. "Where am I?" Jade demanded, though her voice came out as more of a croak. Her throat felt parched. "You are aboard my vessel," Zendros replied. "You became unconscious in the cantina, and I thought it best to ensure your safety rather than leave you in such a public place." "Your vessel?" Jade looked around the room again, noting details she had missed before. This wasn't just alien architecture. It was a spaceship. "What kind of ship has rooms like this?" "The kind that belongs to the royal family of Valeria," Zendros said simply. Jade stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Royal family?" "I am Prince Zendros of the Valerian Empire," he said with a slight bow. "And you, Dr. Jade Romano, may be—" The answer to my people's prayers. The pounding in her head intensified as she tried to process this information. An alien prince. She had gotten drunk and somehow ended up on an alien prince's ship. This was either the best or worst hangover story in human history. "I need water," she said weakly. "And maybe some explanation of why an alien prince is interested in a drunk xenobiologist." Zendros touched something on his side of the barrier, and a panel slid open near Jade's bed, revealing a crystal glass filled with clear liquid. "The water is purified and safe for human consumption," he assured her. "As for your second question, that is a longer story, one that involves the survival of my people and perhaps the future of both our species." Jade drank the water gratefully, feeling some of her strength return. When she looked at Zendros again, she noticed the worry lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders despite his graceful posture. Whatever had brought her here, it was serious. "Tell me," she said, settling back against the pillows. "I have nowhere else to be." And as Zendros began to speak of dying worlds and desperate hopes, Jade realized that her broken heart might be the least of her problems. But looking at this beautiful, mysterious prince, she also began to wonder if her greatest adventure was just beginning. Zendros began his tale as Jade settled deeper into the luxurious bedding, her scientific mind already racing despite her lingering hangover. The crystal walls around them seemed to pulse in rhythm with his voice, as if the ship itself was listening to its prince's words. "My world, Valeria Prime, is dying," he said, his violet eyes distant with pain. "For centuries, our people have thrived on a planet of perpetual twilight, where the twin suns never fully set, and our crystal cities grew from the living rock itself. But something has changed in our solar system. The suns are weakening, and our world grows colder each cycle." Jade sat up straighter, her professional interest overriding her personal discomfort. "What kind of environmental changes are you seeing? Atmospheric composition shifts? Geological instability?" A smile touched Zendros's lips at her immediate engagement. "You understand quickly why I sought you out. Our atmospheric processors can no longer maintain the delicate balance our people require. The crystal formations that power our cities are dimming, and our food synthesis systems are failing. We estimate perhaps 2 of your years before total ecological collapse." 2 years, Jade whispered, the scientist in her already calculating possibilities. "That's not much time for terraforming on that scale. You'd need massive atmospheric processors, genetic modification of existing flora, probably complete reconstruction of your energy grid." "Precisely why we need human ingenuity," Zendros said, stepping closer to the transparent barrier. "Your species has accomplished what we thought impossible. You've turned barren worlds into gardens, created life where none existed. Our technology is advanced in many ways, but we've never needed to rebuild an entire world's ecosystem." Jade studied his face, seeing the desperation he tried to hide beneath his regal composure. "Why not just relocate your people? Surely with your technology, you could find suitable worlds elsewhere." Pain flickered across his features. "We are not merely a people, Dr. Romano. We are bonded to our world in ways your science might struggle to understand. The crystals that power our cities also sustain our life force. To leave Valeria would mean a slow death for our entire species, scattered across the galaxy like dying stars." The poetry of his words made something flutter in Jade's chest. She found herself drawn not just to his ethereal beauty, but to the passionate way he spoke of his people's plight. Here was someone who cared deeply, who carried the weight of an entire civilization on his shoulders. "Show me the data," she said, suddenly. "Whatever readings you have, atmospheric analysis, geological surveys, everything." Zendros touched a section of the wall, and the transparent barrier shimmered and disappeared. He approached the bed slowly, producing a crystalline device that projected holographic images into the air above them. Jade gasped as a 3-dimensional model of Valeria Prime materialized before her eyes. The planet was breathtaking, covered in sprawling crystal cities that seemed to grow organically from purple and silver landscapes. Twilight auroras danced across perpetual dusk skies, and she could see the elegant spires reaching toward twin suns that cast everything in shades of violet and gold. "It's beautiful," she breathed, momentarily forgetting her professional detachment. "Are you?" Zendros said quietly, his voice closer than she expected. She turned to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could see the intricate patterns in his luminescent skin. Heat rushed through her body at his proximity. The combination of his otherworldly beauty, the intimacy of their situation, and the lingering effects of alcohol made her acutely aware of every nerve ending. She could smell his intoxicating scent again, feel the warmth radiating from his body. I should focus on the data," she stammered, but made no move to put distance between them. "Should you?" Zendros asked, his hand moving to rest beside hers on the silk covers. "When was the last time you allowed yourself to feel something other than the pain of betrayal?" His insight hit her like a physical blow. "How did you—" "I recognize the look in your eyes," he said gently. "I too have known betrayal, have felt the sting of those who would use affection as a weapon. My former betrothed conspired with enemy factions to assassinate me and claim power over our dying world. Trust does not come easily to either of us, I think." Jade stared at him, seeing her own pain reflected in his violet gaze. Without thinking, she reached out and traced the elegant line of his jaw. His skin felt warm and slightly electric under her fingertips, sending shivers up her arm. "We're quite a pair," she said softly. "Two broken hearts trying to save a world." Zandros caught her hand in his, bringing her palm to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss there. The simple contact sent fire racing through her veins. Perhaps broken hearts know best how to heal others. The holographic planet continued to rotate above them, but Jade found it impossible to concentrate on anything but the beautiful alien prince beside her. When he leaned closer, she didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and desperate, filled with all the loneliness and longing they had both been carrying. His mouth moved against hers with surprising gentleness. For someone so obviously powerful, she could taste something sweet and exotic on his lips, like nectar from flowers that had never grown on Earth. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "This is complicated," Jade whispered against his mouth. "The best things usually are," Zandros replied, his hands moving to frame her face. "But perhaps we can find solace in each other while we work to save my world." Before she could respond, an alarm chimed through the ship's communication system. Zandros straightened immediately, his expression shifting from intimate to alert in seconds. "What is it?" Jade asked, noting the tension that suddenly filled his frame. A voice spoke in a language Jade didn't recognize, musical but urgent. Zandros responded in the same tongue before turning back to her with worried eyes. "Imperial ships," he said grimly. "My mother's fleet has found us." "Your mother?" Jade struggled to keep up with the rapidly changing situation. "Empress Valania of the Valerian Empire," Zandros said, rising from the bed and beginning to pace. "She ordered me to return home immediately when she learned of my mission to find human terraforming experts. She believes dealing with lesser species is beneath our dignity." The casual racism in his mother's attitude made Jade's jaw clench. "Lesser species?" "Not my words," Zandros said quickly, seeing her reaction. "I have studied human achievements extensively. Your people's ability to adapt, to overcome seemingly impossible odds, to create life from nothing. These are not the traits of a lesser species. They are the traits of the species we need to save our world." The ship shuddered slightly, and Jade realized they were being brought aboard a larger vessel. Fear and excitement warred in her chest as she contemplated meeting an alien empress who apparently disapproved of humans. "What happens now?" she asked. Zandros stopped pacing and looked at her with an expression of fierce determination. "Now, we prove that the bond between us is stronger than the prejudices of empires. Now we show them that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places." He offered her his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and reassuring despite the uncertainty ahead. "Are you ready to meet my mother?" he asked with a wry smile. Jade thought about her ruined career, her broken engagement, her complete lack of diplomatic experience with alien royalty. Then she looked at Zandros's beautiful, hopeful face and felt something stir in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. "Let's go save your world," she said. As they walked toward the ship's exit together, Jade couldn't help but wonder if she was walking toward her destiny or her doom. But with Zandros's hand in hers, and the memory of his kiss still burning on her lips, she found she didn't care. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt alive again. The docking bay doors opened to reveal an imperial escort waiting to bring them before the Empress. Jade squeezed Zandros's hand and stepped forward into whatever awaited them, her heart pounding with anticipation and desire. The imperial throne room was a masterpiece of living crystal architecture that took Jade's breath away. Towering pillars grew from the floor like frozen waterfalls, pulsing with soft bioluminescent light that shifted through shades of purple, silver, and gold. At the far end of the vast chamber, Empress Valania sat upon a throne that seemed carved from a single massive crystal, her regal bearing unmistakable even from a distance. As they approached, Jade got her first clear look at Zendros' mother. The Empress was tall and elegant, with the same luminescent skin and violet eyes as her son, but her beauty was cold and sharp as winter starlight. Her hair was pure silver, braided with what looked like living crystals that chimed softly with her movements. She wore robes that seemed to be woven from light itself, and her gaze as she watched them approach was calculating and hostile. "My son," Valania said, her voice carrying clearly across the vast space. She spoke in accented standard galactic, clearly for Jade's benefit. "You return to us with this creature when your world dies and your people suffer." Jade felt her temper flare at being called a creature, but Zendros squeezed her hand gently, a silent warning to remain calm. "Mother," Zendros replied, stopping at the appropriate distance and offering a respectful bow. "I return with Dr. Jade Romano, one of the galaxy's foremost experts in terraforming technology. She may be our salvation." The Empress's laugh was like ice crystals breaking. "Salvation? From a species that has barely learned to leave their own solar system. You forget yourself, Zendros." "With respect, Your Majesty," Jade said, stepping forward despite Zendros' warning grip on her hand. "My species may be young, but we've accomplished what your people have never needed to do. We've brought life to over 300 dead worlds. We've created atmospheric processors that can transform entire planetary ecosystems in months rather than centuries." Valania's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You dare address me directly, human?" "I dare because your son asked for my help," Jade replied, meeting the Empress's glare steadily. "And because your people are dying while you worry about protocol." A murmur ran through the assembled courtiers, shocked by Jade's audacity. Zendros moved protectively closer to her side, his own expression growing defiant. "She speaks truth." "Mother," he said firmly, "I have seen the data on human terraforming achievements. They have done in decades what our greatest scientists said was impossible." "Impossible," Valania repeated, rising from her throne with fluid grace. "Yes, that is what our scientists said about many things, including the possibility of our species bonding with lesser beings." The way she said bonding made Jade's cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. Clearly the Empress had sensed the attraction between them. "Dr. Romano is not a lesser being," Zendros said, his voice taking on an edge Jade hadn't heard before. "She is brilliant, capable, and exactly what we need to save our world." "What we need," Valania said, descending from her throne with predatory grace, "is to preserve our genetic purity and cultural superiority, not to debase ourselves with alien contamination." That was the last straw. Jade stepped forward, ignoring Zendros' attempts to hold her back. "Genetic purity," she said, her voice rising. "Cultural superiority? Your superior culture is about to go extinct because you're too proud to accept help. You'd rather watch your people die than admit that humans might know something you don't." The throne room fell silent. Valania's expression turned deadly, and Jade realized she might have just signed her own death warrant, but she was too angry to care. "Your Majesty?" A new voice interrupted the tense standoff. An elderly Valerian approached, his robes marking him as some kind of advisor or scientist. "If I may, we have just received the latest reports from the homeworld. The crystal network is failing faster than predicted. We have perhaps 6 months, not 2 years. The color drained from Zendros' luminescent features. 6 months? At most, the advisor confirmed grimly. The atmospheric processors are shutting down in sequence. If we cannot reverse the process soon, he didn't need to finish. Jade could see the devastation in every Valerian face around her. 6 months wasn't enough time for traditional terraforming, but it might be enough for something more drastic. There is a way, Jade said suddenly, her scientific mind racing. It's risky, and it's never been attempted on this scale, but there is a way. All eyes turned to her. Even Empress Valenia looked intrigued despite her obvious disdain. Speak, Valenia commanded. Jade took a deep breath. Quantum atmospheric inversion. Instead of slowly rebuilding your atmosphere, we use massive energy fields to literally flip your atmospheric composition at the molecular level. It's instantaneous, but it requires precise calculations and enormous power sources. Impossible. One of the court scientists scoffed. The energy requirements alone would drain our entire crystal network. Not if you combine it with human fusion technology, Jade said excitedly. We can build temporary fusion reactors to supplement your crystal network. The process would take days instead of months, but it would work. Zendros was staring at her with undisguised admiration. You would risk everything on a theoretical process? I would risk everything to save the people you love, Jade replied, meeting his gaze. Because I care about you. More than I thought possible. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Zendros's eyes widened, and Jade saw her own growing feelings reflected there. Enough, Valania snapped. This is not a mating ritual. This is the survival of an empire. Maybe they're the same thing, Jade said boldly. Maybe the survival of your empire depends on accepting help from other species. Maybe it depends on your son following his heart instead of your prejudices. The Empress's face went white with rage, but before she could respond, alarms began, blaring throughout the ship. A communications officer rushed forward, speaking rapidly in Valerian. What is it? Zendros demanded. Separatist forces, the officer reported. They've seized the orbital platforms above the homeworld. They're demanding the Empress abdicate in favor of a military council. Jade watched in horror as chaos erupted around them. The political crisis that had been simmering beneath the surface had finally exploded, and now the dying world faced both environmental collapse and civil war. We have to get to Valeria Prime, Zendros said urgently. The fusion reactors, the atmospheric inversion, none of it matters if the Separatists destroy the crystal network entirely. My fleet will handle the Separatists, Valenia declared, her personal animosity momentarily set aside. You focus on this impossible terraforming scheme. It's not impossible, Jade insisted, but I'll need access to your best scientists and complete technical specifications for your crystal network. The Empress studied her for a long moment, and Jade could see the internal struggle playing out behind those violet eyes. Finally, Valania nodded curtly. Dr. Romano, she said formally, I am placing the fate of my people in your hands. Do not disappoint me. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Jade worked alongside Valerian scientists to design the fusion reactors needed for the atmospheric inversion, while Zendros coordinated with the Imperial fleet to break through the Separatist blockade. Despite the crisis, Jade found herself stealing moments with the prince whenever possible. Their connection had deepened beyond mere attraction into something that felt like destiny. When he looked at her, she saw not just desire but complete faith in her abilities. When she looked at him, she saw a future she had never dared to imagine. The final battle came as they entered Valeria Prime's atmosphere. The Separatist fleet engaged the Imperial forces in a spectacular display of energy weapons and crystal technology, while Jade and her team activated the fusion reactors positioned around the planet's surface. Initiating quantum atmospheric inversion, Jade announced over the communications array. All fusion reactors to maximum output. The planet below them began to glow as massive energy fields surrounded it. The dying atmosphere shimmered and twisted as molecular bonds were broken and reformed in new configurations. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Jade had ever witnessed. "It's working," one of the Valyrian scientists breathed in amazement. Through the observation deck, they watched as Valeria Prime's twilight sky began to brighten. The crystal cities pulsed with renewed energy, and the twin suns seemed to burn more brilliantly as the new atmosphere captured and concentrated their light. "The Separatist fleet is surrendering," Zendros reported, joining Jade at the observation deck. "They can see what we've accomplished. The world is saved." Jade felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the planet transform. They had done it. They had actually saved an entire world. "You did it," Zendros said softly, pulling her into his arms. "You saved my people." "We did it," Jade corrected, melting into his embrace. "Together." Their kiss was deep and passionate, filled with the joy of victory and the promise of a future. Together. Around them, the Valyrian crew cheered as their homeworld bloomed with new life below. When they finally broke apart, they found Empress Valania watching them with an unreadable expression. "Dr. Romano," the Empress said formally, "you have saved not just our world, but our future. The Valyrian Empire is in your debt." "I don't want a debt," Jade replied, her hand finding Zendros's. "I want a partnership. Between our species, between our worlds, between your son and me." Valania's expression softened slightly as she saw the way Zendros looked at Jade, the obvious love and devotion in his eyes. "Perhaps," the Empress said slowly, "it is time for the Valyrian Empire to learn from other species. Perhaps it is time for new bonds to be forged." 6 months later, Jade stood in a crystal garden on Valeria Prime, wearing robes of shimmering silver that had been crafted especially for her wedding day. The atmospheric inversion had worked perfectly, and the planet thrived with new life. Hybrid plants that combined Earth and Valyrian genetics grew in impossible beauty around her, symbols of what two species could accomplish together. Zendros approached through the garden, breathtaking in his formal regalia. Behind him walked both Empress Valania and Captain Noah Cross, who had become fast friends despite their different species. "Ready to make this official?" Zendros asked, taking her hands in his. "I've been ready since the moment I woke up in your bed," Jade replied with a grin. Their laughter echoed through the crystal garden as they joined their lives and their worlds together, proving that sometimes the most broken hearts could create the most beautiful love stories. And in the distance, the twin suns of Valyria shone down on a world reborn, a testament to what humans and aliens could accomplish when they chose love over prejudice, cooperation over conflict. The HFY spirit lived not just in grand gestures of heroism, but in the quiet moments when two beings from different worlds chose to trust each other with their hearts and their futures. And as Jade and Zendros kissed beneath the eternal twilight of their saved world, the universe seemed a little less lonely, a little more full of infinite possibilities.